Tuesday night was primary night in Pennsylvania, and I wasn't, I was not following this race, but the gubernatorial nomination went to, I guess, apparently a wealthy businessman who is, I didn't realize this at the time, but is considered very progressive.
Tom Wolf is his
And
name.
in the 13th congressional district, you had a someone I think who could be described as an economic populist. He is not the greatest record when it comes to
He's anti-choice. And,
yes.
Well, and then funny, because we're going back, on memory lane here, big part of that district is northeast Philadelphia, and I know it as well as I know any other district in the country because that was my first political race ever in 1992 while I was in college. Was a Democratic congressman from there, and it's that kind of a neighborhood. It's very working class Catholic, and economic populism plays very well there. You can be elected as a Democrat, but it is more socially conservative. I know there's a suburban part of it too. So you had Marjorie Mezvinsky, Margolis, I guess.
Yes.
She dropped the Mezvinsky at this point, I think. But yes, that's gone. Who is Chelsea Clinton's mother-in-law, and even with some help from the Clintons, was not able to pull it out because, from what I heard, she just spent her time campaigning in the wealthy mainline suburbs, and again, a huge chunk of that is in the city. And then you had Dalen Leach, who's a huge progressive, who I think on all issues, a lot of people were hoping would pull it out. So, that's kind of a mixed result, but certainly when it comes to looking at it from an economic perspective, to economic progressives, one. And I think what you're referring to here is there's an article in U.S. News, regarding the New Democrats and whether they've seen their day pass. I would argue from both an objective perspective, looking at where we are right now, and a biased perspective, what I hope,
Right.
that I think it has. It doesn't mean that there aren't still going to be numerous districts in the country, kind of like there are districts like this one we're talking about in Northeast Philly, where being more socially conservative and economically populist, however, you may get some that aren't as socially progressive as most Democrats, and there are going to be some suburban type districts where you're going to get New Democrats. But I don't believe that the New Democrat philosophy is now the governing philosophy of the party anymore, and it's not the conventional wisdom of the party. And that's an enormous change from where obviously we were in the 90s and really the 2000s, the aughts, if we'll call them that, where, Clintonism was what defined the party.
Yep.
And I think with the rise of Elizabeth Warren is one, but I think even certain, Sherrod Brown making it to the Senate from Ohio and others who've led the fight. I mean, you've got Bernie Sanders checking out a presidential run in Iowa. How serious he is about it, I don't know, but he doesn't seem to be a guy that messes around with those things lightly. There's two competing factions at this point, legitimate ones. And quite frankly, the one that is more progressive has had a number of victories lately. I mean, really, when you're talking about that Pennsylvania race, one can't forget that there was a point in time when Allison Schwartz, who was one of the chairs of the New Democrats from those wealthy suburbs of Philly, was the leader by about 20, 25 points. Now, granted, Tom Wolf spent a lot of his own money. We do have to factor that in here.
Right.
All right. He's a wealthy businessman, and having the resources certainly makes a huge difference. At the same time, with the name recognition she had, with the fundraising she had, apparatus she has as a New Democrat, one would have thought that she'd be unbeatable. And she just got smoked. And a big part of that was when a group that, full disclosure, as I always do, I consulted for in the past, Social Security Works and other aligned groups, went after her for her association with Third Way, when they came out, which is what's left of, what used to be the Democratic Leadership Council, when they came out with their idiotic attack on Warren and de Blasio and others in the Wall Street Journal, and claimed that everybody thought cutting Social Security was just a swell idea and that we should be for it. And, a number of groups, including Social Security Works, went right after Allison Schwartz and said, well, what are you going to do about that? I guess she was, I don't know if she was one of the chairs of that group, but she certainly was among its leadership in some way, in an official capacity. I just don't remember what the title was. And she ended up resigning from that and having to distance herself, and it still did not help her. So there's more to that story than just the fact that Wolf won. And I would say that, again, I wouldn't say the progressive faction is now dominant. I think that would be too optimistic. But I would say there are two legitimate competing factions now where there just weren't as recently as 5 or 6 years ago.